make them equal. A woman is equal in the bedroom. She has an equal right to pleasure, which is something that we still don't believe.
Right.
And that she has an equal right to consent. And
Yes.
it says that if you cannot even give her that status and respect in the bedroom, which is the most private of the spaces, how can you expect that she will have that outside?
Outside.
So
Wow.
it's the first book that actually talks about equality.
So we have the gorgeous Seema Anand with us today. She's a mythologist and storyteller. She's a UNESCO affiliate, and she's the author of the book, Arts of Seduction. And it's a groundbreaking documentary on the ancient text, Kamasutra. So Seema's basically a Kamasutra expert. And I promise you the thing she says to you, you will not forget. She plans to change humanity one story at a time. I love that. I love what she says. Let's take the Kama Sutra. People have a particular perception of it, which I know from talking to you quite a lot, that it's not what the general perception is. Can you tell us a little bit about it? I know you can talk for days and days and days on the Kama Sutra, but just briefly, what is it and what makes it so special?
So, okay, it's a very simple thing, actually. The Kama Sutra, most people think, is a book about positions because it's a treatise. It was written as a treatise, which means that it's written in a particular set of grammar and in a particular set of metaphors. And when you do not understand what those things mean, and the only word you understand is positions, then that's what you focus on. Right. The positions are the tiniest part. I mean, it is such a tiny part of it. And it's actually also has a very relevant position. The positions have a very relevant position in the Kama Sutra. They're there for a reason. They're not for acrobatics. But the Kama Sutra itself is a book about social conduct. It's written in 7 sections, so it's quite a long book. Section 2 is what focuses on the arts of love. And the text, interestingly, was written for men, because this is a time, it's written in 300-something AD, when women were not taught how to read or write. So the book is originally written for men, to teach men how to pleasure a woman, or to teach men how to treat a woman. And they believed that if a woman got that pleasure, you know, that pleasure was the path to heaven. The fact that every king who ever came to most people think there is one Kama Sutra. There isn't. There are several thousands, because every king who came to the throne would have a text of the Kama Sutra commissioned, because they believed that if two people were engaged, if they shared in truly mutually pleasurable intimacy, then that relationship would be stable. And if the relationship was stable, society would be stable. And if society was stable, the kingdom would be stable.
Wow.
But you know, it was seen as the path to heaven. It was seen as what would balance the universe. Pleasure, I should also add over here, is a word over time that we have adopted. It's an English word. It's not an original Sanskrit word. And it's also, it comes with a lot of baggage.
Right.
But pleasure back then didn't quite mean what it does now. Pleasure meant an awakening of the senses. So where your nerve endings, where everything comes awake inside you, as opposed to the lethargy that senses seem to drop into. You know, we live a sort of habitual life. We fall into a kind of monotony, and the senses get dulled.
Right.
And with dulled senses, your nerve endings are not awake. Everything that your body is supposed to be doing on the inside it's not being done. And so pleasure was what raised your metabolism. It got you going. Well, it's a fact, you know, when all your senses wake up, everything functions better. That's the energy. Yes. You know, most people think of the energy as the Kundalini, and then you have to meditate and you get it up and you use it to meditate and go on to a higher plane. The energy courses through your body. It has to bring everything alive. And the very first thing that it goes past are your sexual organs. It is going to energize them.
How can intimacy lead to wellness?
Okay.
And on the other hand, if someone didn't have intimacy in their life, how do they get to wellness?
Let's point out a couple of things. Interestingly, the idea of celibacy, again, back, you know, when we talk about tantra, when we talk about pleasure, etc., we talk about it from the terms of Sanskrit. celibacy doesn't necessarily mean that you are not having sex. It's about what is being aroused inside you. Secondly, did you know, Anshu, that there was this entire thought process that you could use certain sexual positions to heal chronic illnesses?
Oh my God, that
Yeah.
is amazing.
So imagine, if you will, a bottle and you fill it with water, and whichever way you turn the bottle, the water will flow in that direction.
Right.
So the idea is that when you perform a particular sexual position, the energy is aroused, it flows in a particular way. And it was just the way that position was performed, sort of how much time it took, how many thrusts, etc. There was a whole science behind it. Everything from low hemoglobin to gastric wind.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things from this. And even till now, there aren't that many left in India, but there still are. In places like Tibet in China, you have practitioners you can go to. So if you're a woman, you can actually go to a practitioner who's a man. And if you're a man, you can go to a practitioner who's a woman. And you actually can have this, the sexual therapy.
Oh my God, that's
yourself.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's amazing that there is, I guess it's a lot like maybe acupuncture. It's about the energy and what meridian, removing the blockages from the meridians.
Yes, absolutely. And the most difficult one to get past is your second chakra from the bottom. So if you consider, it's known as the Swadhisthana chakra, okay, which basically translated means the dwelling of the self. So that's the core of your being. That's where your life force is based. And if you want to try and find it for anybody who's not aware, it's like a 4-finger width just below your belly button.
Right.
So if you trace a finger around to the back, so you'll know where it is in the front, the back. It is the one that gets blocked the most. It's the most difficult to get your energy past the Swadhisthana chakra. And so a lot of our meditations, our breathing exercises, the sexual therapy, etc., is all focused on clearing that particular gateway. So if you actually Google, I think it's Google MD. I think that's the medical base on the internet.
Right.
And they will tell you that sex is extremely good for you physically. It can help you to de-stress. It improves your memory, etc., etc. Now, the idea behind it is, like I said, it's about raising certain shaktis, raising certain energies inside you. And those energies power your nerve endings. And that's what leads to better health. If you do not have a partner, I don't want you to worry. There is a way, of course, of raising these energies either way. To me, pleasure is distinct from sex. The two things are not necessarily together. They're not mutually exclusive, and they're not terribly tied together as well. For pleasure, I would suggest that time spent by yourself, if you can get some, is extremely important, because as they always say that, you appreciate the sunlight because you know that there is darkness. You appreciate the togetherness because you know you can be away. So to get more out of a shared intimacy, please consciously spend time away from each other. Make more of holding hands. Sit in front of the television, or even not in front of the TV, and actually just very gently hold hands. You wouldn't believe how much comfort and just, that little warm feeling that you get from just being able to do that. It's unbelievable. Don't even hold hands fully if you don't want to. Just link your 4 fingers. You'll be amazed at the difference it makes. Just try it. And sit quietly just doing that. Don't just think, okay, I've done that. This is a formula. E plus C square something will lead to this. It doesn't. Give it a little bit of time. The Kamshastras always say that the thing that truly melts away stress between two people is to either share a funny story, a naughty story, or gossip. So in this case, I am saying to you that for your health, do please share some gossip with your partner. It's it's like when you play cards. If you gamble, somehow time disappears. You don't think of anything else.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you share a little bit of gossip. Time disappears.
Right.
You drop all your inhibitions, all your stress, and for a little while, it
Yeah.
just brings you closer together. Lord Shiva's very first point was that tickle each other. And if you can make each other laugh, it dissolves the stress between you.
When books like the Kamasutra were written, right, the average lifespan was what, 40, 50 years or so? Today, it's believed that every generation is living 10 years longer. So what do you think will happen with single partners, with monogamy, with marriage?
So I personally think that monogamy is again about understanding what you mean by monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking in traditional terms that, it's about sort of dumping your partner and moving on to another one because the chemistry is gone, the Kama Sutra says that the best sex, so let's go one step at a time,
Mm-hmm.
the best
Mm-hmm.
sex
Mm-hmm.
is with somebody that you've been with for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Because the chemistry is gone, which means that you will take it much slower. You have to put a
Right.
lot more effort into it.
Right.
And when you do that, the whole arousal takes a different turn. And great sex can be of many different types. Please remember, your sex, your orgasm, your
Mm-hmm.
sexual experience, your orgasm is not a race to the finish. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Imagine it's like a train journey. You can get off at almost any station that you want.
Right.
Okay? You've got a day pass. You can get off anywhere you want. Treat it as that. So, you need to be able to understand that there's so much more that goes into pleasure. Just the touching of the skin,
Mm-hmm.
that's part of intimacy. Kissing, just being together. The whole idea of being with somebody who you are comfortable with has a lot of benefits when it comes to a sexual relationship.
Right.
And if we say that there is so much pleasure in sex,
Mm-hmm.
then frankly, you see somebody, you've got this great big arousal, this burst of ejaculation, and you're done, then you haven't experienced any of those pleasures. So in order to do that, you actually need to be with somebody that you have been with for a long time. But my point is that monogamy is a social construct,
Mm-hmm.
but we live within this society.
Mm-hmm.
And hence, it is something that you need to think about. If you want to live within society, there are certain rules that you live by. A lot of people feel, oh, well, monogamy is an outdated concept. A lot of people use this as an excuse. Anything that you want to do for the long term, you're going to have to work at it.
Right.
And it does
Yes.
take a
Very
lot of
good
working at. Okay?
Yes.
It does take a lot of work. But it's like you said, we live to be maybe, 80 years old. You want to be healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
For that entire time,
Mm-hmm.
which means that you're going to work on your physical health. You're going to exercise. You cannot say, I exercised when I was 22 years old, and that should last me till I'm 80 years old. You can't do that.
You can't say that. Absolutely.
So it's the same thing for your sexual relationship. And I'll tell you one other thing. Whatever you might think is there on the other side of the fence,
Mm-hmm.
trust me, everything comes to exactly the same point.
Ultimately, yes.
Ultimately.
Yes.
So don't be so quick to sort of jump over the fence and go elsewhere. Work at it. It's truly, in the long run, it's worth working at. I remember this line from a Elizabeth Taylor movie years ago. I think it was called Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Mm-hmm. It said, if a marriage is on the rocks are generally in the bed.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah. Now, whether this is absolutely true or not, I don't know. But why not work towards it? And it's hard. It's not easy to do. Go with that.
When you were studying the Kama Sutra and when you wrote your book, Arts of Seduction, what were some of the more unusual and interesting things that you discovered?
So I'll tell you what I did discover, and this is when I decided to write the book. It's when I discovered that the idea of intimacy was considered so beautiful. It wasn't just that, oh, this was a really open society and they believed that sex was a good thing. And no, it was because they believed that it was an art form. If it's going to last you all your life, you have to be a virtuoso at it.
Yes.
You treat it like an art form. It was beautiful. It was elegant. It was subtle. And so even your positions, you learnt them. Each position is indicated by a piece of jewelry. So you never say, oh, she climbs on top. You say she put on her jingling girdle or whatever.
Right.
But you learned to execute each position by wearing a piece of jewelry and understanding how that piece of jewelry should move on you.
Oh, amazing.
That's when I thought this has to go further. I mean, till then, of course, we talked about perfume and the whole idea of perfuming your body. Like I said, you don't need a partner for this. Your skin is like an erogenous zone altogether. And just loving yourself by rubbing yourself with perfume, with different types of oils, is just so good for you. It's self-love. It makes you feel amazing. I loved this idea. It was so complex and so fabulous that if you have a 9-string necklace of pearls, you would wear that and understand how those pearls need to move to be able to perform the sitting position.
Wow, that's amazing. My God, that sounds magical, actually. You know, it was handled so beautifully through jewelry. That's amazing.
And I personally think that the Kam Shastras of ancient India were written by women, because the Kama Sutra really does focus on the pleasure of women. So it doesn't say, okay, now fine, you've had half an hour of this or 1 hour of this, now move on, come on. It doesn't. It actually says, you know, it could take days. It says that when you first get married, you do not expect to have sex with your wife if she's a virgin, if you don't know her, on the first day. You should either wait 3 days, 6 days, or 9 days, depending on how shy she is, bringing her to that point, because it says that if you actually force yourself on her on day one, you may just put her off sex for the rest of your life, and you're the one who'll lose out.
How this was about attaining almost equality for women?
You know, okay, so it wasn't about social equality because, well, you couldn't go that far. So you had to start somewhere. So it says, make them equal. A woman is equal in the bedroom. She has an equal right to pleasure, which is something that we still don't believe. And that she has an equal right to consent. And it says that if you cannot even give her that status and respect in the bedroom, which is the most private of the spaces, how can you expect that she will have that outside? So it's the first book that actually talks about equality, because till then it had been believed that, you know, that as a woman, you did not have an independent source of pleasure. They believed that, because you see a man's hard on, you see a man ejaculate. You cannot see a woman's pleasure rising. There's no physical manifestation of it. So they believed that a woman's pleasure depended on the pleasure of a man. That's where it came from. So this is the first book that says, no, a woman has independent sources of pleasure and it has nothing to do with a man.
What advice would you give people?
So, you know, a lot of people believe that pleasure is, a lot of women particularly believe that pleasure is taboo. Pleasure is very much a taboo thing, and women will not even think of their own pleasure. Most women have no idea that they're capable of pleasure. And a lot of them also believe when they go into a sexual relationship that it is their partner's, or this is what they've been led to believe, it's their partner's role to bring them to pleasure. Your pleasure is your responsibility. You have to open up those channels in your brain which say that you deserve pleasure, you have the right to it. You have to start to explore what gives you pleasure before you can tell somebody else. And your partner, if you've got one, is there to be part of your pleasure. They will take part in it, but they're not responsible for your pleasure. You are responsible for your own pleasure.
In some religions, is lust stroke pleasure not a vice?
I don't know whether I would attach it to a religion. How you need to approach this today, that you should be worrying about what an ancient religion might have said. I would like you to think about this. Don't think about it as lust. That's another thing that we really, so again, in ancient India, we have this amazing idea that everything is to do with love. So whether you hate somebody or you're indifferent or whether you're lusting or whether you're loving or you're feeling, everything comes out of that one spring, that one fountain. It's all to do with karma. It's all love. It's just different aspects of love.
Right. Love.
And no emotion is ever unchangeable. So what's love today can change to hate. What's hate today can change to love, and so on. Pleasure is a particular part of your inner being. It's part of
Mm-hmm.
your core. It's a
Mm-hmm.
Shakti. It's an
Mm-hmm.
energy. This idea that in some religions, some things are taboo. I'm not going to tell you what other people in other religions might feel. I just feel that this is something that should come from within you. Treat it as an energy.
Self-pleasuring, is it okay? Is it guilty? Should we be guilty about it? Is it permitted? Is it permitted for women?
As medics will tell you, self-pleasure is a great thing. Psychiatrists will tell you self-pleasure is a great thing. I always say it's up to you. Self-pleasure is something that comes in so many different forms, whether you're going out to buy a handbag,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're spending 2 hours perfuming yourself just because it makes you feel really good, because each perfume has a different impact on different parts of your body, or whether you're actually masturbating, whether you're actually exploring your body and loving yourself. Somebody actually asked me, what if your partner doesn't want you to do that? Your body is your own. And I really think that at some stage, we have to change the way that we think about sex and pleasure. Forget sex, actually. Let's not talk about that. We have to change the way that we think about pleasure. Your body is your own. Your decision on how you feel pleasure should be your own. And certainly the Kamasutra has a lot that it says about self-pleasure. So everything from, I have a whole chapter in my book which is called Ungli Prayog, or the art of the curved finger.
Oh, wow.
Because it says that in Ayurveda, as you know, each finger has a different energy. So there's earth, wind, air, water, fire. Yeah. Not in that order, of course. But so it says that when you pleasure yourself, or if your partner pleasures you, each finger or each combination of fingers will bring a different energy. It'll bring a different sensation because it carries a different energy. Okay. So if you put fire in front of water, it'll become a different energy. If you put water in front of, again. But also that each combination of fingers, it changes the shape of the finger that you're using. So if you've got three, it'll change the way that it enters you, of what part of you it touches, and so on. So each one had its own pleasure points. And there's a whole chapter on it. It does say, and I should put this out, that it says don't use your forefinger on its own because that just agitates, it doesn't give pleasure. So just a little bit of information out there. Okay. But, it talks about, we always say how it's the colonial influence that destroyed the idea of pleasure in India. Well, I'll tell you what. The Kamasutra and a lot of the Eastern societies have this idea of the silver balls, okay? Two tiny, tiny little silver balls on a silk thread or silk ribbon, which would be inserted inside you. One would have a little tiny drop of mercury, and the other one was just a little bell.
Mercury, wow. Okay.
Well, inside, sealed inside, because when you walked around and you were doing your housework, the mercury would heat up and start to vibrate.
Right.
So as you walked around, and then it would hit against the other one, which would make a little tinkling sound. So it gave you a little bit of pleasurable sound as well as a little buzz to keep you going. And I think that's such a great idea, that as you walk around doing your homework, your housework, you'd get this little, this little frisson, this little bit of excitement going. And when the British East India Company came to India, there was a black market in these little silver balls because they wanted to take them back to England. And the natives in India started to provide them with normal fluid instead of mercury, because mercury is more expensive.
Oh, wow.
So there was a whole black market, and there are cases registered in India of people being taken to court because they've given something that didn't have the... So,
about pleasure and tantra. How is tantra different from normal?
Tantra is a philosophy. Now, most people think of Sting, and they're like, if we practice tantra, we can have tantric sex. There is no such thing as tantric sex. Let's start with that. Tantra is a philosophy, and the ultimate aim of tantric philosophy is to achieve God, is to achieve moksha, like in any other philosophy. But the difference is that we believe in tantra that everything was created by divine hand, so everything is connected. There's no such thing as good knowledge and bad knowledge. So you learn everything. And they understand that this thing that we call karma or love or pleasure or shakti, whatever is inside us, is an energy that has to be aroused, and it has to be taken to the next level and the next level.
Can you talk about the Mahavidyas, please?
So the Mahavidyas are these 10 amazing goddesses who are all worshipped with tantric practices. So they're tantric goddesses. They have their hierarchy. So the topmost one is Kali. The bottom rung is Lakshmi, which is really interesting. Yeah, Lakshmi is the one that you worship, the one that you leave behind as you go higher. So literally, Mahavidya means ultimate knowledge, and these are the goddesses of ultimate knowledge. They take you beyond this veil of illusion to ultimate truth beyond. And they're a fascinating bunch of goddesses because they all are very old. They've all existed for a very long time. But for some reason, in their own right, for some reason, these 10 goddesses were brought together in 1000 AD and made into a group called the Mahavidyas. So like Lakshmi has a Mahavidya identity and she has a Hindu identity. So as a Hindu goddess, she is the wife of Lord Vishnu. She's always seen within the circle of his arms. She is the ultimate goddess that you aspire to within the Hindu belief. As a Mahavidya, she is generally worshipped without Lord Vishnu. So none of the Mahavidyas are worshipped with male consorts.
Interesting.
They're all, they're independent of male consorts. So it's not because they're trying to put men down, or they're just independent. It's a gender neutral universe that we're going towards. It's about Shakti.
Interesting.
You know? So yeah, it's just literally, they're a fascinating group. They're very difficult to understand because if you look at them, their iconography always generally has them sitting on a couple who are making love on a cremation pyre, or you have Chinnamasta. Yeah, that's how most of them are actually depicted. Tara is depicted like this often, Tripura, Sundari, and so on. So you'll have a cremation pyre, you have two people making love, or if they're shown in positions of copulation, in positions of sexual intimacy, it's always with the goddess on the top.
Wow. Okay.
So that shows the independence, that because that was the position of control, of power.
Right.
And you have Chinnamasta, you know, who's chopped off her own head and she's holding her head in her own hand. And there are 3 streams of blood coming out, and 2 streams are feeding the 2 women on either side of her, and 1 stream is feeding her own mouth. And people look at it, and it's just difficult to understand why you would have something like this.
Yeah.
But the thing is that Tantra is also a very, very esoteric philosophy. It's a very secret philosophy. So unless you become an adept, unless you become a sadhak, a practitioner, officially, you're not allowed to be told what all these things mean.
Oh, interesting.
My advice would be go find a couple of well-written books on the Mahavidyas, read up about them. They're a fascinating group.
Thank you so much, Seema. I think that was so educational. Thank you for listening to this chat. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to this page. Please subscribe to our podcast on Apple and Spotify, Wellness Curated, and follow us on Instagram, Wellness Curated, the number 1. Thank you.